Can you describe what going beyond compliance means to you?
Well, first and foremost, I don't want us to forget compliance. Compliance is important to the Department of Education. We actually look at every data element we collect, and we look at what's the legislative mandate, federal or state, behind that. And when we get questioned on that, we take that very seriously. So compliance is important to us. Moving beyond compliance, to me and the department, the governor has stated he wants to support schools that teach. So that's where we're going to base our themes. We're going to figure out what moving beyond compliance means. That's one of the purposes of this summit. That's part of the follow-up from Dr. Qualia last night. We want to hear what our panelists have to say. We want to work with you. There are 35 blue block sessions over the next 3 days where we have PD employees who want to hear what you need to, what we need to do to help school districts use their data more effectively. What can PDE do to provide supports to help you use the data that we collect more effectively? So that's what it means to the department right now, and we'll come up with a better definition of what moving beyond compliance means.
Wonderful. Sounds like the department is getting ready to hear all the LEA's perspectives. Our next question goes to Dr. John George. Dr. George, could you describe what going beyond compliance to get value out of data means to an IU? And could you share the data systems you use to inform your decisions?
Sure. Well, first of all, at the intermediate unit level, we use data for much all our decision making. So let me give you 3 examples. We use data to get to know our school districts and understand who they are. We use data for fiscal and programmatic efficiencies on the internal side, and we use data for public accountability. So let me give you examples for all 3 of those. You heard last night the keynote speaker talk about you have to know who your students are, you have to engage with your students in order for them to be successful. It's very similar to the intermediate unit with relationship with school districts. We need to know our school districts inside and out in order for us to be able to support the school districts and help them do a better job at educating students. For example, we track their aid ratio, we track their enrollment data, we track their millage rates, we track their school performance profile data. So we need to know our school districts inside and out. We need to know what their goals are and what their aspirations are. So for an example, if we understand that a majority of our school districts have one-to-one initiatives or iPad trainings, that tells us we have to customize our professional learning to have technology integration. So we have survey data and we have numeric data that we're tracking for our school districts, so we know who they are. Internally, we have to look for fiscal efficiencies and program efficiencies. Examples are early intervention program serving children 3, 4, and 5-year-olds with disabilities. So we have a data tracking system to make sure that our speech therapists and our physical therapists, occupational therapists are maximizing instructional time. So we have to, since they're itinerant and they're traveling from district to district or community to community, we need to plot how much time they're spending in travel versus how much time they're spending in instruction, so we can eliminate travel time and increase instructional time because it's good for kids. Likewise, we have a data dashboard, not to be confused with the other data dashboard, but we track how fast we can get students from identification into evaluation into placement. That's complying with federal regulations, but it's also trying to reduce that time to get children in programs and services as soon as possible. On the public accountability side, you heard Governor Wolf just about a couple weeks ago ask school districts to find $150 million in savings and use the intermediate units to do so. So we have to help districts demonstrate that they're saving resources wherever possible. Let me give you some examples. We run healthcare consortiums. So we look at the number 1 cost driver on the healthcare side. Happens to be heart disease. So is there anything we can do from a wellness program or from other type of intervention programs to reduce costs for school districts in that area? We track workman's compensation claims for school districts. Number 1 workman's compensation claim is back injuries. So if we know that data, then we can place perhaps supports in place for our paraprofessionals who have to lift children with disabilities. So there's lots of ways we look at data to get those fiscal efficiencies and also programmatic efficiencies. And the last accountability piece I'll mention real quick, we purchase consortium fuel, energy, supplies. So we look at historical data on the price of fuel, for example. We know when the high point and low point is over a period of years. So we want to lock in a price, at the low point, therefore saving school districts money in terms of how much they're spending on fuel. Any dollars we can save on those kind of infrastructure issues is more money available for children.
Wonderful, thank you. Next, I'd like to address the same question to Mrs. Bender. Could you describe what going beyond compliance to get value out of data means to you, and could you share the data systems you use to inform your data decisions?
I think at Shippensburg we're really benefiting from a process of going beyond compliance. So the data systems that we're using today far exceed what we did even 5 years ago. We're informing our financial decisions with data, obviously our classroom decisions with data, but we're also very actively surveying our community for data as well. We have feedback surveys online. We survey our teachers on a regular basis. So creating a culture of going beyond compliance with data has been a process. I can remember in the early 2000s, I sat in a middle school faculty room as a math teacher. Hearing that 100% compliance was going to be reached in 2014, I really had a plan to retire by then. And now I sit on a stage talking about it. But I think if I was going to look at the difference then, when compliance first came in, and I think many people in this room have experienced it, we really were being very reactionary to the compliance data. What are our PSSA results going to be? What is this going to look like? And we would just start randomly reaching to meet that compliance goal. We would go out and try to figure out what everyone around us was doing. And I believe I'm on Pinterest, I love Pinterest, but I saw a quote on there that says, successful people never worry about what everybody else is doing. And I think that is exactly when you know your district has moved beyond compliance, is that when you have knowledge of the layers of the onion that are your data, that you can make a decision that works for your backyard, not worrying about all the other backyards in the state, then you know that you're truly meeting the needs of your clientele. And that's our goal in Shippensburg. We're not there yet, but we're on the pathway to going beyond compliance.
Wonderful. And the same question to you, Ms. Britvich.
Well, I think that many of the districts in Pennsylvania do all that they can in order to go beyond compliance. I think that when you talk to your colleagues, a lot of districts out there are doing everything that's possible to try to find ways to help students. And we're at Albert Gallatin School District, which is a large school district, rural, in southwestern Pennsylvania. And our needs are probably not very unique when compared to other school districts. But one of the things that our superintendent, Carl Bezak, got us involved in was the piloting of the early warning system, the dashboard, the intervention catalog that was developed recently by PDE. So we were one of 4 districts in the state that assisted in the first attempt to implement that catalog. And I think that just by the vision that our superintendent had, knowing that PDE was going to support that stride toward using this catalog to help finding the at-risk students that otherwise might not be recognized, that's how our district went beyond compliance, because it's not as though it was a compliance issue. It's not as though every district in the state had to do that. But we really have to credit our superintendent for allowing us to take part in the pilot. And I think that that intervention catalog is going to make a difference for us. Maybe other districts have things in place where they may not need something like this, but the tool is turning out to be a great tool. And it's a free tool, which that's essential. School districts don't have money to waste. So that's the way Albert Gallatin went beyond compliance just recently. And I'm finding that we are already seeing a greater amount of success with it, because it starts the conversation early on about those students who might be at risk for graduation 4, 5, 6 years from the time they're in middle school. And this is a middle school program. It's designed to be started in middle schools, although now there's talk about it going, forward into the high school and down below into the elementary, as I understand it. might be a while till that happens, but to me, this was a step that we did that was going beyond compliance.
Yes, wonderful, thank you. Mr. Christopher, can you share your perspective on the same question?
I love data. I really do. I like it a lot. I think my first year at Juniata Valley as the elementary principal in 2008, and my faculty walked into a slide that said, "Trust in God, everybody else bring data." And there's a reason for that. I see these as two separate issues, to be honest with you. I see compliance, like what we do to try and be compliant with the department's requirements is its own animal. And then what we do with all that data we've already collected is the separate part of this. That's the going beyond compliance. Because we have all that data, you have all that information for your school district, you might as well do something with it. Positive for your kids that you can actually turn it into actionable items for your students. So, I mean, that's how we view it at Juniata Valley. Like, we really look at them as two separate pieces. Like, we make sure we're compliant. Obviously, we'd like to be compliant as well. But at the same time, you have all this information that you can then use. We use data for everything. I mean, honestly, I think just like has been stated, like, why are we spending so much money on X? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? Why do we have so much staff time devoted to this? You know, you have to be able, I think in this day and age, to be able to demonstrate to your constituents, to your board, to your students, this is why we're doing it. And here's the graph that shows you why we should be doing it. I think that's what this is about. I think this whole summit is about these two pieces. Like, can we ensure that anyone who asks us why we're making a decision, that we have good grounds to do that? And that's what this means to me. I find it very illuminating. I think it makes decision-making so much easier as a school leader because you're not guessing at what you think is the best avenue to go at. You're not guessing at what you think is the best option for your kids. Like, you really do. You can say, this is why we have to do this. And it makes things a lot better for everyone. I think it makes it much harder for people to come in and argue with you at board meetings. You show up a graph that shows everything you're doing and why. It tends to be very quiet. Then you make sure it gets in the paper the next day. You send that graph out there in a PDF. Those kinds of things are important. But to me, that's what this is about. And I think, as all of you, I hope, are here for the next couple days, that's what I would like all of you. I mean, in my dream, that's what we would frame, is that we have compliance. We're trying to make sure that we're compliant, getting all the data we need to collect, because it's so important to your district financially and all these other reasons now. But then you also have all that data. What are you going to do with it next? What is your next step? How is it going to improve the lives of your kids? Because ultimately, that's what we're all trying to do. So thank you.
Thank you. Very wonderful point. I take the same view on that. And Ms. DiLella, and I loved saying your last name, thank you. I'm going to say that over and over today. Could you share your definition of going beyond compliance, getting value out of data, is similar or expands on the definition shared by our previous panelists, and could you also share the data systems you use to inform decisions?
Well, being the largest district in the Commonwealth, and probably most of you have seen a Philadelphia student here or there probably cursed us every once in a while saying, here we go again, there's another Philadelphia student. Our challenges have been trying to keep track of all of our students throughout the Commonwealth, wherever they go. And even prior to PIMS, because I was involved with the initial rounds of PIMS, Philadelphia was always trying to use data for decision making. And I remember back right before PIMS had begun, we had started a project called SchoolStat with the University of Pennsylvania. And it was looking at various operational data points so that our principals could then look at schools comparable to themselves. And our assistant superintendents would actually then bring the principals in to evaluate themselves against each other with like schools. And from that developed our data warehouse, where we had taken all of our data from a lot of our different systems, not only the student side, but also the HR, finance, payroll side, and tried to bring together all kinds of data to allow our schools, our administration, et cetera, to start to evaluate our schools. So we've spent a lot of time in the past almost 10 years looking at data from the Philadelphia side to actually be able to make decisions on our schools. And unfortunately, a few years ago, we had to close almost 25 schools, but use the data that we had collected over the time to be able to make those decisions. So for us, we have a number of systems. And right now, my student system, which houses the majority of our data, is 25 years old. And it's a green screen legacy. Our secretaries love it in our schools, but nobody else does. And so we're in the midst of putting an RFP out on the street to bring in a brand new 21st century system. But that system then sends data to all of our other systems for our schools to look at, and to, we have a very large investment in Pearson products with SchoolNet, our instructional management system, and other modules through Pearson products. And we're building another data warehouse now to replace our current warehouse. We call it the Business Data Warehouse. And in there, we'll not only provide more tools, but also add additional data that we have not had a chance to in the past. So our systems are some old, some brand new, but Philadelphia's commitment to data is so important that we've developed our own tools. We use the PIMS, we use the state systems where we have to help make us decisions in our schools.
Thank you.